And I wanted to quickly touch on something that, like a debate I saw on Twitter. It was something about zonal, like how people are talking about the importance of rotating, like in terms of like you're attacking your team's players rotating position. So maybe like how we have Martinelli and Trossard rotating positions compared to Saka, where there isn't much rotation on that side. And I feel like some of the debate was mainly just around what's more preferred, what gives you more advantages. Is it the player who's just dominating his zone? Look at Saka, for example, who doesn't rotate much with anyone because Ben White doesn't really rotate with him, nor does Odegaard, but he completely dominates his right hand side. Or what's better, is it the left hand side where you've got Martinelli, who, yes, he creates chances in the wide area. He's able to do stuff in the wide area, but he doesn't dominate that zone as well as Saka dominates the right hand side. You see what I mean? So it's like, but we've seen what Martinelli does recently, or what Martinelli has done when the striker has been able to rotate with him, with Gabriel Jesus, and recently with Trossard, and we've been able to see how he's been very impactful and very important. He's got 12 goals already this season, and we've seen what's possible and what he's able to do when he can when he's not just stuck out wide, but has the ability to rotate and drift inside and then drift outside and create, or be able to attack space that's been created for him and exploit the opposition like that. But we've also seen with Saka that regardless of him being just dominating his own, he's able to dominate his own zone 1v1, 2v1 and create situations from there and still get 10 goals this season as well. So then you have to ask the question, what is more important? I feel whenever there's a debate like these kind of debates, the correct answer is always somewhere in the middle, because obviously this you have this person trying to get his point across, you have this person trying to get a point across. But if you're like someone who's standing on the outside looking in, you can always see that the answer is just right there in the middle. In most situations, it's never really this person is completely wrong or this side is completely wrong. I don't think either side is completely wrong. I think it's important to have a guy who can dominate your zone as well. I think that's very important to have. I mean, just rotating is not enough, and just dominating your zone is not enough either. Because dominating your zone, yes, I mean, if you can dominate your zone, there's only a few defenders that will be able to mark you out of a game. So take Saka for example. There's only a few fullbacks that will actually be able to dominate. I don't even think there's been a fullback that's been able to even pocket him this season, because he's been able to do that to almost every single fullback that he's met this season. But at the same time, rotating doesn't mean that you can't also dominate your zone as well. You're also capable of dominating your zone. Ribery was someone that was capable of dominating his zone with his dribbling. But he had Alaba. Remember the season when they got to the Champions League finals and when they even won the Champions League? He had Alaba on the other side rotating with him as well and switching sides as well. So it doesn't mean that because you can dominate your zone that you also can't rotate. So it's not a case of which one is better. Yes, you want to have a player who can dominate the zone as well. But what rotation or positional rotation, what that offers you as well is the ability to become more unpredictable. Yes, you can have Saka dominating the right hand side, but if Saka is able to drift inside and the opposition fear the fullback who's coming across him and they feel like, oh, that's someone like Dani Alves or that's someone like Marcelo, someone that I know that if they get to the wide areas, they're going to create chances, that all of a sudden draws players out of position. It then creates more position, more space for your winger who's already dominating his zone already, and creates more position, space in the middle. If you can drift inside as well on the attacking mid, take Kevin De Bruyne for example. The way Kevin De Bruyne drifts into the wide areas, and then Mahrez for example drift inside. It's like the defenders know that they can't just follow Mahrez. Yes, Mahrez can dominate his zone by himself, but the defenders know that they can't just follow Mahrez all around the whole pitch. They can't, because if De Bruyne drifts into the wide area, no fullback in the world is going to be like, oh, let me just leave De Bruyne out there and let me focus on Mahrez because Mahrez is able to dominate his zone. No, they're going to follow De Bruyne out wide because everyone knows that De Bruyne on that right-hand side, when he starts crossing the ball like that, it's going to be very dangerous. So that's the importance of having a mix of both being able to having players that can dominate their zone as well as having players who are willing to rotate. Because think about it this way. If if Mahrez wasn't able to dominate the right hand side and he drifted inside, and De Bruyne rotates to the wide area, then the rotation would be pointless because they will just leave Mahrez because they don't really care about him if he doesn't dominate, and they will just all double up on De Bruyne on the right hand side, and then De Bruyne can't really make the cross because then you will just have players willing ready to cross to clear it. But because they know that Mahrez is also very someone who's very difficult to mark. It's the same with Saka. They know that Saka is very difficult to mark. If Saka comes on the inside, they're going to follow him on the inside. But if we had someone who can rotate with him on the right-hand side, be that Ben White, be that Odegaard, someone who can overlap on him on that side, they would also fear that guy as well, and they would go out wide to the wide areas, knowing that this guy can create something, and therefore creating extra space for Saka. Just like that, Saka can go from having 2v1 situations to 1v1 situations. So again, for me, it's not so much about which side is rotating is more important, or zonal was more important than anything. I don't think there's either side. I think both sides is important. You need to have guys who can dominate their zones, but rotating is also really good. Wenger was someone who thrived a lot on rotations as well. In terms of, like, if you look at some of our best teams, where we always had the likes of Arshavin, Nasri, Rosicky, all playing in the wide areas, and you had another attacking mid like Fabregas again, or even Najri, sometimes Rosicky, all in the middle, and players are rotating positions. And what we saw from that was, it was very like whenever you saw Wenger ball at his best was when players were rotating positions, playing nice little 1-2s, players were drifting inside from wide, players were drifting wide to the outside as well, and then all of a sudden you see a guy just becomes free and attack space in behind. So rotation is really, really important as well, because it just makes you unpredictable in attack, and it creates space for others, because when players have to follow each other, it creates space for the other guy. So yeah, I think both aspects are really important. I think the main area of the pitch where was it called, where you want to have more zonal, what's it called? I think the mix of zonal and rotation is more important offensively. But I feel like an area of the pitch where you would rather have more fixed kind of area, where you want to have more zonal, a guy who dominates his own zone, where you would have more fixed rather than rotation, would be in the build-up and defensively. So for example, we attack with 3-2, 3-2, so 3-2-5, let's say 3-2-5, you're the three centre-backs in Gabriel, Saliba, Ben White, and then Zinchenko and Partey. And then you got the 5 attackers up there, Martinelli, let's say Xhaka, Gabriel Jesus, Odegaard, and Saka. Where I feel like you want to have a more compact or a more zonal kind of situation is behind the ball, is with the 5 guys behind the ball. The reason why you want to have it that way is because you want to be, although as you're building a play, at the same time you want to be compact, because whilst building a play you can still lose the ball. If you lose the ball, you want to make sure you have Gabriel on the left hand side at all times. You want to make sure you have Saliba defending the central areas at all times. You want to make sure you've got Ben White defending the right side at all times, and you want to have Partey and Zinchenko in the midfield, because at the end of the day, once the ball is lost, these guys are all in position. There is no gap. There's no gap in the left, there's no gap in the right, no gap in the middle. They're all there to be able to continue to be able to block the opposition from attacking, press them for a while, whilst waiting for the our other attackers to drop deep and support them defensively. You see, so in that kind of sense, it's a lot more important to be zonal in that kind of sense, and to be a lot closer and more compact together. Because once the ball is lost, you want to have players in position, ready to win the ball back and ready. Because if you're rotating and you end up leaving the left hand side free, once you lose the ball, they're just going to attack that side. You see what I mean? So for me, I feel like the mix of dominating your zone and at the same time being rotating is more. It's more for me. I feel like it's more important offensively. Defensively, you need to be able to dominate your zones. Gabriel has to be able to defend. Once we lose the ball and a team pushes the ball into the wide area, we need Gabriel to be able to defend in the wide areas. We can't have a centre back who can't defend out wide, because then he's just gonna get beat, because Zinchenko drifts into the midfield. The left back zone is kind of open, so you need Gabriel to be able to defend in the wide areas. You need Saliba to be able to dominate in isolated situations centrally, because he's the one in the middle. You need Ben White on the right hand side to be able to defend in the wide areas. So these are the key things that, and why I feel like the zonal was more is more important defensively and then build up. Whilst offensively, you need to have a mix of both things. So yeah, there's no right or wrong style. You don't want to have just zonal. You don't want to have just rotating. You need to have a mix of both things.